We all remember Wednesday's video. I talked about the all-new iNeo Next 2, which thought to be dead, just happened to actually end up being alive now, and it's back better than ever with the all-new Strix Halo-based AMD APUs, which are some of the most powerful APUs we've ever seen, being able to support up to 40 CUs with RDNA 3.5. And you might be thinking, wow, this sounds impressive. Can't believe they were the first ones to do it. Well, not really. Just a few days before, and I even mentioned it in my video, but just a few days before, GPD made an announcement with the GPD Win 5, and I went into some detail about it, but I thought I would make a dedicated video expanding upon my thoughts about the reveal, the announcement, and the configuration. From what we currently have seen and know about the Win 5, it's going to use a very similar design and concept to the Win 4. This PSP Vita style with a sliding keyboard mechanism. We're not 100% certain if the sliding keyboard mechanism is retained. From what it looks like, it might and also might not at the same time. I'm leaning towards that it's no longer there purely due to the fact that the sheer thermal capacity and space required, they will need every millimeter that they can get their hands on to improve cooling the best that they can. And one of the ways they got around this, which I sort of glazed over in my video, was they no longer have a built-in battery. They're taking the Apple Vision Pro approach by having an external battery pack, which isn't inherently stupid, especially the way that they're going about it, because the way the Vision Pro does it, if you don't know, it's essentially a battery pack that's sitting in your pocket and there's like a cable tethering it to your head, which is fine, especially since it's a VR headset. It's nice not to have the weight on your head of the battery. But for a handheld, that would also be a killer option, which I am led to believe that this is the case, that you can use it sort of in a tethered mode, but that might cause some issues. I'm not entirely certain yet. But from what we have seen so far with schematics provided by GPD showing this attachment mechanism, you can attach the battery to the system. But there are some concerns that I have with potential cooling issues because it seems to cover some of the intake venting for the fans, and that could potentially cause the fans to be a little choked. But like I said, this is still very early days for this product, and we're still a few months away from this thing fully releasing. But to see it just still in this more of a prototype stage, it's a little weird considering this thing is supposed to be coming out in October as far as we know. The Legion Go 2 that we saw at Computex back in January looked more complete than what we've seen so far of the Win 5. But GPD hasn't really failed me before. They have consistently released amazing products, and they're one of the few more of a boutique PC handheld manufacturer that I haven't heard a tragic horror story of a failed delivery or lost in shipping or failed payments or whatever the hell. They have consistently been pretty okay across the board. I haven't heard anything outright horrible, but I have heard some things that were like, this could have been better. Let me know down below if you have encountered any seriously negative experiences with GPD, because I'd be very interested to hear, because it's important to keep note of these kinds of things so a buyer can make the most informed decision. But something that we've been playing on the screen are the benchmarks of this processor. Granted, these are in more laptop form factors or a tablet form factor, so it won't be exactly the same of an implementation we might see in a PC handheld, because on most laptops and tablet style handhelds, we can probably get an extra 10-20 watts out of it on those systems, where I think in a handheld we might be a little bit more constrained down to maybe 60 watts. We've seen some handhelds go past that, but given how powerful this thing is, I think once we start entering that 80-90 watt range, we run into some serious thermal problems. Because sure, you can shove like 90 watts through a Z1 Extreme, but at the end of the day, it's still a Z1 Extreme. They'll probably get like 95 degrees Celsius hot, which is still really hot. But something with that much power, like the 395, whatever the hell the processor name is, that thing will get insanely hot given how powerful the components are in this thing. So cooling is something that they seriously have to deal with. And seeing the approach of having this modular battery system is a very intriguing approach, though I would have preferred for them just to make the device bigger, because famously GPD has made one of the more famously compact and smaller PC handhelds, especially with the Win 4 notably being quite small when compared to many of its other contemporaries. So seeing them maintain a very similar format for this new handheld is a little interesting, to say the least. I would have preferred them to go something a little bit larger, especially given the fact that, like I said, there's going to be some serious thermal and power requirements for this processor. And it would have been just a lot nicer to have the battery built in, because that's what iNeo was doing, and there might be a huge protuberance for the battery, but at least it'll be built in. These things are going to be massively heavy. Given the picture I'm showing you now, we do have a rough idea of how much this thing is going to weigh, and it's going to be weighing about almost 550 grams alone with just the handheld. The Steam Deck is like 430 grams, and that was a heavy boy at its time as well. And with the battery is almost like 900 grams, which is insane. Assuming videocards.com had that almost 900 grams figure correct, that's almost 2 pounds of PC handheld, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you take into consideration the average gaming laptop is like 5 pounds, in something like an Ultrabook, something that's meant to be portable, something like a MacBook Air, that's 2.7 pounds. It's 0.7 pounds away from being a laptop in terms of weight, but with the form factor of a PC handheld. That's dense. We are definitely entering a very new and very interesting era of PC handhelds, and they're big. They're gonna be chonkers. Though there still will be the normal PC handhelds we've experienced, things with Z-type processors from AMD, those being the Legion Go 2, the many other handhelds from ASUS, from partnered with Xbox, and the Zotac handhelds and MSI. They'll all make your standard PC handhelds, and those will all cost about anywhere between $600 to $900. These new handhelds from GPD and iNeo are going to at bare minimum cost $1,500 if you compare them to similarly spec'd micro PCs. They are going to be expensive, though they do have a history of already being fairly expensive. Especially if you start speccing up these newer iNeo devices, you could very easily end up spending like $2,000. Granted, $2,000 gets you like the highest spec'd one, putting you like 3 or 4 versions of the handheld above the base model. The base model might end up being like $1,500, where in the past that probably would have gotten you like one of the more mid-spec'd versions with like extra RAM or storage. We're talking about the base model version starting at where the last generation would have been somewhere in the middle of that in terms of where it's stacked up in the product lineup, which is what I honestly think is a pretty fairly good idea and a good approach for them to take, because with the rapid advancements the big PC companies have made in making these handhelds more affordable, something that prior to them existing, iNeo and GPD didn't really have to compete with, because at the time they were competing with things like the Nintendo Switch, the Steam Deck, but now that pretty much everybody in their freaking dog has a PC handheld now, it kind of makes competition for these more boutique builders, where in the past they just relied on the sheer novelty of what they were doing being unique and their selling point being no longer a selling point, and they have to make themselves more unique and give you a reason to buy them. Which, the reason you should buy them is because they're going to be some of the most powerful options you have access to, because I highly doubt we'll see an ASUS go out and make one of these gigantic 8060S equipped handhelds, because the sheer cost and weight and just the massive amount of R&D it's going to take to make a handheld around those processors. But you know who has the budget and the will and the gumption to do it? GPD and iNeo. I would love to hear what you guys think about this detachable battery situation. Would you like to see it in some other handhelds, or are you a bit skeptical like I am about how this is going to work? I would love to hear what you guys think down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All of those social media numbers down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.